It's a little box.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Let's chat about 4 tips about raising virtuous children. In case this is your first time watching one of our videos, thank you so much for finding us, whether it be on YouTube or on Facebook. We appreciate your time. Why are we talking about virtue?
Because we need virtue. We need to grow in virtue. And so we're trying to learn about it.
Yeah, and also trying to pass that on to our children, because if you haven't connected with us before, how many children do we have right now, Janelle?
We are in the process of waiting for this little one to come. This would be baby number 6.
And our oldest
is 9.
Is 9. That's quite a few children a little bit quickly, right?
Did you just realize that?
And as Catholic parents, our number one goal is to get our children to heaven. Mm-hmm. We feel like God has given us this great gift of life with our children. He's blessed our marriage, and we're thankful. And we take our responsibility very seriously in passing the faith on to our kids and getting them to heaven. The greatest tragedy in life would be for me as a father to have not for one of my children to obtain the gift of salvation. So virtue plays right into this, and that's what we're going to talk about today, because without the virtuous life, salvation's really not possible. What is a virtue? A firm disposition of doing good. Mm-hmm. So we want good children. We want godly children. And there's different types of virtues, but we're going to leave it there for that definition right now. Mm-hmm. Firm disposition of doing good. So here are 4 tips about raising virtuous children. Number 1, teach the virtues.
Yes, be very direct, because we can't just assume that they're just going to learn by osmosis. And for the most part, like, we'd love for them to learn from our example, but often our example is far from perfect. And so I think that it's important to teach directly what is a virtue, how does it look, how can we practice it? And The thing is, it is about practicing, creating a habit of virtue. Mm-hmm.
It's very helpful to know what the virtue of fortitude is if you want to grow in it. So we have to talk about this with our kids. And that also assumes that we know what it is ourselves. You might be thinking, well, how in the world do I teach the virtues if I don't know them myself? I'll share a resource with you that I think is really good, and it's very simple. It's called The Virtue Driven Life by Father Benedict Rochelle. It's a simple read. It's a great place to start. If you want to go a little bit deeper into the virtues and what they are, then start reading St. Thomas Aquinas, because he's excellent.
But for children, we were introduced to this program. It was created by the Dominican Sisters Mary Mother of the Eucharist out in Michigan. And we've gone through it a couple times with our kids, and we realized we need to go through it again. Because like anything that's really worth our time, it's important to learn it over and over. And virtue, we learn through practice. Basically, it was a program created for schools, but you can just get like a home version of it. It's a little box. Anyhow, it goes through the 4 cardinal virtues of temperance, justice, fortitude, and I'm missing one. Prudence. There we go. See? I need to keep learning. Anyhow, so basically we go through the different cardinal virtues, and then on each card, which is really cool, they break down the cardinal virtue into a bunch of smaller virtues, many of which I have never even heard of, like magnanimity or affability.
And sometimes it's like we know this is the right thing to do, but we didn't have the word to put to it now. Right. So now we realize, oh, this is the virtue of affability.
What I really like about this, so this is the virtue of justice, and an example of a virtue within the virtue of justice is prayerfulness. So then they have little images that are drawn by children from the schools in which they teach. And it says, what does it look like? It looks like folding your hands and bowing before receiving Jesus in Holy Communion. What does it sound like? It sounds like silence. And then they always have like a little prayer on the back, and then an example of a saint who lived out this virtue.
So the way we would use it is we pull out one of these cards in order at supper time, and we go through this while we eat as a family. So we talk about, for example, courtesy. What does it sound like? What does it look like? And we have a discussion at our meal together as a family. We can also do it through conversation. When someone does something absolutely wonderful, we point it out and say, you're demonstrating the virtue of, and then you affirm them in the virtuous living. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful because they've just done it, and then you remind them of what they have done. Now that presumes we are able to recognize the virtues in ourselves and in our children. And again, Get a book, get resources so you're able to do that. Otherwise, you can't. You just can't pass on what you don't have. Number 2, model. Want to teach your children virtue?
This is the hardest part.
For some more than others. Hard for me. It's
hard for me too. Especially when you're just being pulled in so many directions.
One of the things that I'm becoming more aware of as days go on is the habits that I have will be passed on likely to my children. So I ask myself the question, do I want my children to have my habits? Honestly, some of them I can say yes. For some, I can definitely say no. So they're watching me, and they will do what they see more than what they are told. There has to be a correspondence between what they have been told and what they see. Number 3, how to pass virtue on to children? Through discipline. Our children, just so you know, they do things wrong sometimes. Maybe yours don't, and they need to be corrected. I find that we as parents have a great ability to tell children what not to do, but we're really weak in telling them what to do. So we're great at pointing out the vice, in other words, but weak at pointing out the virtue. So when it comes to disciplining our children, what I try to do is in the conversation, yes, talk about the vice, but then also talk about what could have you done, and then try and name the virtue that they did not practice. Anything to add?
No, that's really good. I like that idea. We should do it more often.
Number 4.
Pray for the grace.
Pray for the grace. If you want to teach virtue, pray for the grace to live it out.
Yeah, because we can't do it on our own.
Yeah.
And to think that we're perfect parents is a lie. We need God's grace to help us.
You know, if I want to be honest, a good chunk of what I confess in the sacrament of confession
parenting
has to do with being failing to be a good parent.
Yeah, me too.
And also a good husband. But that's how family works. That's how God makes us holy. It's working within the context of family. And if this isn't part of our confession, then we're not really examining how we're treating our children, and that would be an error. Because there's no such thing as a perfect parent unless your name is the Blessed Virgin Mary. I'm assuming it's not. So we need to pray for the grace and go to confession when we fail. And not only just pray for the grace, but I think pray for the grace for our children.
That's right. And that's our duty as parents. We need to pray for our kids. We can't assume that grandma's going to do all the praying.
But grandma probably do a lot, at least in our cases. We're blessed that way. It's our responsibility. And if we don't do it, we can't expect the person down the street to do something that God has given us to do.
Yep. It's our responsibility.
So those 4 things to grow in virtue. Number 1, teach them. Number 2, model it. Number 3, through discipline. And number 4, pray for the gift of virtue to be flourishing in life. Guys, thanks for watching. Have a great day.